Now let's talk about Penguin Random House. So we have their financials have come in. What's going on with Penguin Random House? So shifting publishing companies over one.
Right. They saw revenues climb to about 2.7, which is about a 2.7 billion, sorry, marking about a 2% increase, about 53.6 million from the same period last year. But that was largely fueled by the acquisition of Hay House in 2024. Their profits took a hit. They dropped about 41.98 million
Of their EBITDA. That's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and I think amortization. I forget the A in EBITDA.
Anyway, dropped about $42 million to about 297.3 million, which is a 12% decline, which is attributed mainly to lower revenues and their core U.S. business, escalating costs, growth-related expenses, yada, yada, yada. They did say there were some bright spots. Their audio publishing segment and their publishing services continued to shine. International Arms posted strong revenue and earnings growth. The UK division got market share, and the UK book market is actually like really good. So Thomas, what are your thoughts on how this whole thing reads? Like when the data happens this way, when the money happens this way, what does that look like for Penguin?
So this is what an industry in decline looks like.
So bad.
Earnings going down is always bad, but the fact that their only revenue growth is coming from acquisitions,
right? That's what I saw.
Is another concerning sign for the industry as a whole. So we see this with like Protestant churches, where like Protestant churches will like close, but like there's still some people going to one church, and so they'll leave and go to another church. So if you're in the like hot church, it doesn't feel like churches are closing all over because more people are coming to your church, but it's not because like people are converting to Protestantism. It's because other churches are closing and there's like fewer churches in town overall, fewer people going to church overall. It's an industry in decline. And we're so switching from the religious back to the actual industry. They're not doing well. Their revenue growth isn't because their books are doing better. Their revenue growth is because they're buying other companies that are also in distress in hopes that if we combine their powers, we'll be able to do well, which often doesn't work out. It's very difficult. Acquisitions are very expensive. I remember reading a business book. It was like top business blunders of all time. And it was like the 10 most biggest blunders of all time and how expensive they were and what the lessons were. And I think 8 out of the 9, out of those 10 were acquisitions and mergers. Like M&A is very often a very expensive mistake. Not always, and sometimes it can work. But connecting this with the Bloomsbury story earlier, there is a fundamental problem kind of across traditional publishing that is what is the word I would use is decadence. That's not the word that they would use. They would use phrases like cost structures or escalating costs. But there's a kind of an industry-wide decadence that's really hurting traditional publishing. And the lean, mean indies are inheriting the industry. So, and I'm using decadence purposefully because I want to kind of allude to like a Rome in the 4th century, right? Where it's very wealthy, very extravagant, very wealthy aristocratic class, right? The elite Romans in the 5th century were as wealthy as Romans ever were, or comparable. But you've got these lean Ostrogoths who are hard men living hard lives and hard women living hard lives. And it's the Ostrogoths that are going to be living in the palaces of those Romans.
Why is this your metaphor? We literally have Braveheart on the thumbnail. Like this is the English versus the Scots.
Well,
the English would come. No, the English would come in and take whatever they wanted from the Scots, and they would treat them however they wanted, and that's how the traditional book industry treated indies or self-pubs for the longest time.
Or treated authors.
We will bless you when we bless you, and we will take from you what we want, whatever we think. And then the Scots decided they had enough, and we got Mel Gibson.
So what needs to happen in traditional publishing is that they need to embrace frugality is the first thing that needs to happen. There needs to be a leanness, a hustle culture. So people who are willing to work hard and make less money, right? And less extravagance kind of. So move out of New York City. So if I were put in charge of Penguin Random House, I would move them out of New York City. And to do two things. One, to move somewhere cheaper, but also to get rid of the people who don't want to move, who don't have that hustle attitude.
They're
They're
not
like,
gonna
"Oh, I
do
wanna-"
that. That's
Oh,
a
of course they're not.
prestige thing.
Oh,
That's
absolutely. Yeah.
there's no way.
I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying that that's what I would do. I'd be like, hey, all the other big five can be in New York City. We're moving out of New York City. And we're doing that to send a signal, because the other piece of this is there's a zeitgeist mismatch. Part of the reason that revenues are down is that the new books are not doing well.
Right.
With some exceptions. So Romantasy is doing really well. Sarah J. Maas is like single-handedly propping up all of traditional publishing right now. I saw a number that she had sold, I think, $300 million worth of books. And this is from my memory, so I may not have that right, but it was like a huge part of Bloomsbury's revenue was Sarah J. Maas. So the Pareto principle is really important here. But setting those kind of hits in Romantasy aside, there's a cultural shift that traditional publishing is not taking advantage of. They're out of sync, and it's causing a lot of their books to fail completely, right? So if you go to a traditional publisher, there's typically a page that has their new releases on it. And so you can go and you can cross-check those new releases on Amazon and see how many reviews they're getting and what their Amazon sales rankings are. And you'll find, and you'll be shocked, actually, this big traditional publisher that's wooing you, these new books aren't doing good at all. They're getting single-digit reviews. They're in the 5-digit or 6-digit rankings in terms of sales. And it's like, wow, they're not doing well. And then the other way to check is you go to the bestseller list on Amazon and see how far down in a category you have to go before you can find a single traditionally published book. So the barbarians are already at the gates. Authors are already making more money as indies. It doesn't mean that all indies are making money. There's a lot of indies who are also not making money. And there's lots of issues there in terms of, if you wrote a bad book, it doesn't matter how you published it. No one's going to want to buy it. If it has a bad cover, no one's going to want to buy it. So the publishing method isn't as important as the quality of the book and the quality of the marketing. But these publishers are in decline, and there are things that they can do to fix it. But I'm not seeing any indication in any of the big publishers that they're even aware that they're out of sync culturally. They are aware that their cost structures are out of control, which is why we're seeing publishers like Bloomsbury laying off people in a very easy section to lay off, right? If I were in charge of Bloomsbury, I'm like, these children's books aren't selling anything. They're not even worth printing in print. We have 5 staff positions. That's a huge payroll for a sector that's not bringing in any money at all. That's an easy layoff to make, but they're going to have to make deeper cuts moving forward, I suspect.